Okay, so you know that feeling, right? When you're just endlessly scrolling, like jumping between videos and articles and just anything to, I don't know, like escape boredom.
Hmm.
What if I told you that this constant switching might actually be making you more bored?
It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? We've got all these endless entertainment options, but I don't know. It seems like we're struggling with boredom maybe more than ever.
Right.
And this research paper you sent over, fast forward to boredom, how switching behavior on digital media makes people more bored, dives right into that.
It does. It really does.
It's fascinating.
And it's packed with experiments exploring how, our digital habits might be totally backfiring on us.
Yeah,
So let's jump right into it.
let's do it.
This deep dive is all about unpacking those key findings and what they tell us about, well, how we engage with this digital world.
Yeah, so the core idea here is that when people feel bored, they often switch between different types of digital content, and they do this as a way to escape that feeling. And the researchers, they found that people were much more likely to kind of skip around when they were watching boring videos compared to the engaging ones.
Right. That makes total sense.
It's like we're constantly hitting that fast forward button on boredom.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that makes sense.
Right.
But here's where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
The study found that this switching behavior, the one we think is helping us escape boredom, might actually be making us more bored.
More bored.
Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
So they ran an experiment where some participants watched a single 10-minute video, while others were allowed to switch between several shorter videos, like 5-minute videos.
Mm-hmm.
And the results were fascinating.
Yeah.
The group that switched between videos reported feeling significantly more bored than those who watched a single video straight through.
Yeah, and that's a really surprising finding, right?
It is.
Because you think, oh, if I'm bored, I can just switch and it'll be better.
Right, right.
But in fact, sticking with one thing might actually be the key.
So switching to avoid boredom might actually be the very thing that keeps us stuck in it. Like, why is that?
Well, one key insight from the paper is that switching really disrupts our attention,
Uh-huh.
which is absolutely crucial for overcoming boredom.
Right.
Like if we're constantly jumping between all these different pieces of content, we never fully engage with any of them.
Right.
We never reach that kind of state of absorption that allows us to connect with the material and find it meaningful.
So it's almost like we're, I don't know, like afraid to be bored.
Yeah.
So we keep ourselves in this state of perpetual distraction.
Mm-hmm.
And the researchers even saw this, reflected in the study.
Right.
With participants who switched between videos, they reported lower levels of meaning compared to those who just stayed with a single video.
Yeah, and that raises a lot of questions about how this constant switching might be impacting our ability to find meaning and satisfaction, not just in our digital lives, but just in life in general.
So it's not necessarily about the content itself,
Mhm.
but the way we're consuming it.
Right.
Right.
So, like, a single piece of content, right, it might be totally engaging,
Totally.
but the act of constantly switching is preventing us from fully experiencing it.
Exactly.
Like, we're always looking over the fence, wondering if the grass is greener on the other side,
That's a great way to put it. And
Yeah.
it makes you think, are we really getting the most out of what we're consuming?
Right.
Or are we just missing out on that deeper level of engagement because we're so quick to jump to the next thing?
That's such a good point. It highlights like the importance of finding ways to engage more deeply with what's right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
But in a world that's designed to like constantly distract us,
Yeah.
how do we even begin to do that?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
And it's one that the paper's findings really kind of force us to grapple with.
Yeah.
It's almost as if we need to relearn how to be bored,
Oh, wow.
to allow ourselves to just sit with that feeling.
And kind of see what happens when we resist that urge to immediately escape it.
Right.
You know?
And isn't that what many spiritual practices have been teaching, like for centuries?
That's right.
Practices like mindfulness and meditation, they emphasize being present in the moment
Mm-hmm.
and resisting distractions.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
There's a really fascinating connection there
Yeah.
because, digital switching, it's all about seeking the next thing,
Right.
the next hit of dopamine, the next distraction.
Uh-huh.
But spiritual practices, they encourage us to slow down,
Yeah.
to be present with what is, and to find contentment in the simplicity of the moment.
So, in a way, these ancient practices, they might hold the key to navigating our modern digital landscape.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Instead of trying to, escape boredom,
Yeah.
maybe we need to learn to, like, embrace it.
Embrace it.
to see it as an opportunity to cultivate deeper presence and engagement.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is. It really is. Yeah, it really makes you wonder, how these digital habits are shaping not just our attention spans, but like our overall capacity for engagement and making meaning.
Absolutely. And the paper goes on to explore this even further.
Mm-hmm.
They actually ran a study where they like let participants watch videos on YouTube, choosing any content they wanted.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like real world stuff.
Real world,
Yes.
totally.
That's interesting.
And some were instructed to switch between videos while others just stuck with one. And what's fascinating is that like even in this less controlled environment,
yeah.
they found the same pattern.
Really?
Those who switched between the videos, even videos that they, themselves chose and were presumably interested in,
Right.
reported feeling more bored than those who just watched a single video.
So even when we're choosing content that we genuinely enjoy, we're still kind of messing it up by switching around.
It's like, it really emphasizes that it's not just about the content itself, but about the act of switching and how that fragments our attention.
The act of switching, yeah.
It's like we're always like looking over the fence, wondering if the grass is greener on the other side.
That's a great way to put it.
You?
And it brings up this really interesting concept that the researchers explore called opportunity cost.
Ooh, tell me about that.
Okay, so opportunity cost is basically the idea that, like, when we're aware of other options, it can actually diminish our enjoyment of what we're currently experiencing.
Okay, yeah, I see.
So it's like, you're at a buffet, you're enjoying the food on your plate,
Right, yeah.
but there are all these other dishes that you could be trying, and it makes you feel less satisfied with what you're currently eating, even if it's delicious.
Makes total sense.
Right. And in the digital world, it's like we're at a constant buffet
Yeah.
of choices. Every platform is designed to keep us scrolling, keep us clicking on the next thing.
I know, and they're getting so good at it too.
I know, it's scary.
It's a little scary.
And so the researchers actually found that this sense of opportunity cost might actually play a role in that, boredom switching cycle, especially when it came to like reading articles online.
Oh, interesting.
It wasn't always the content itself that caused boredom, but the awareness of other articles that they could be reading.
Oh, so it's like, I don't know, like that fear of missing out kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, FOMO.
FOMO, exactly.
Makes sense.
And think about it. How often do you find yourself reading an article, but your mind is already like jumping to the next tab, the next link, the next piece of content?
All the time. It's like I can't even focus on what I'm reading because I'm already thinking about what I'm going to read next.
And that constant awareness of other options, it can make the current content feel less satisfying, even if it's something you would normally enjoy.
Right.
It's almost as if our ability to appreciate what's right in front of us is being eroded by this like anticipation of what's next.
So it's not just about like training our attention, but also about like managing our expectations in a world of just endless choices.
Precisely. And the research suggests that part of the solution might lie in learning to cultivate this sense of contentment with what we choose to engage with, rather than constantly seeking, that perfect next thing.
Right, like being present with what's right in front of you.
Exactly.
That's it.
And that brings us back to those spiritual practices we were talking about earlier, mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
They're not just about focusing on the present moment, but they're also about cultivating this sense of acceptance and like non-judgment towards our experiences.
Okay.
So it's about learning to appreciate the inherent value of what we're experiencing rather than constantly comparing it to some like imagined ideal.
So maybe like the key to combating boredom in the digital age isn't about finding like better content.
Yeah.
But about developing a better relationship with the content we choose to consume.
That's a really profound insight. Yeah. It's about shifting our focus from like external stimulation to internal engagement.
And that requires like a different kind of attention. A kind of attention that's like patient and curious and, I don't know, like willing to linger a little longer than our digital habits might normally allow.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really does seem like we've like stumbled onto a pretty profound insight here that our digital habits, particularly this constant switching between content,
Right.
might actually be undermining like our ability to find meaning and satisfaction.
It's a thought-provoking idea, isn't it?
It really is.
The researchers, they dug even deeper into why switching kind of backfires when it comes to boredom, and they argued that it really boils down to this disruption of our attention.
So even if the content itself is, like, super interesting,
Yeah.
the act of switching is preventing us from fully experiencing it.
Exactly. It's like trying to read a book while constantly flipping to different pages.
Yeah.
You never get to fully immerse yourself in the story or connect with the characters, appreciate the nuances of the liquid.
Right.
Yeah.
Without that deep engagement, it's just harder to, like, find meaning and satisfaction.
Yeah.
Like we're always, skimming the surface, never diving deeper.
Precisely. And this brings us back to, those spiritual practices we were discussing earlier, practices that emphasize mindfulness and focus.
Yeah.
They're about training our minds to resist distraction and just be fully present with whatever we're doing.
So could applying those principles to our digital habits help us, like, break free from this boredom switching cycle?
It's possible, right?
Instead of seeking that, perfect next thing, maybe we need to learn to find deeper meaning in the present moment, even if it's just, I don't know, a YouTube video or an online article.
It's a powerful shift in perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
From seeking external stimulation to, like, cultivating internal engagement. It's about recognizing that the key to a richer, less bored digital experience might not be about finding the right content, but about developing the right kind of attention.
That's a great way to put it. So, to sum up our deep dive today.
Yes.
We explored this, like, fascinating research that suggests that switching between digital content to avoid boredom might actually make us more bored.
The irony.
I know. It's so ironic.
Wild.
We talked about, like, how this paradox might be linked to attention disruption,
Right.
the influence of opportunity cost, and ultimately, like, our struggle to find meaning and satisfaction in this world of just, endless choice.
Harmless choices, yeah.
And we've connected this to, like, the wisdom of spiritual practices that emphasize mindfulness, presence, and, focused attention as potential antidotes to this, like, digital boredom cycle.
Absolutely. A lot to think about.
It is a lot to think about.
I mean, you say.
Yeah, so for all of you listening, here's a final provocation to, like, mull over. Think about your own digital habits, right? Do you find yourself constantly switching, fast-forwarding, seeking the next thing?
Yeah.
What would happen if you, like, consciously tried to slow down, to be more present with a single piece of content,
Right.
to savor the experience without the distraction of, like, what else is out there?
Yeah, what would that be like?
Could that lead to a richer, less bored digital experience? I think it's a question worth exploring.
I think so, too.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us.